Hi everybody, Paul Gallagher. What I want to talk about in this video is clarity. Basically, one of the sliders, really powerful tool. If overused, it can make things look tremendously ugly. But if used properly, it's a pretty incredible tool, and it stops you from diving in and making lots of individual adjustments that where maybe you can get most of the work done globally before you refine it with localized adjustments. So clarity slider resides here, okay, down here. It's on texture, clarity, and dehaze, and it's the middle slider. So what exactly does it do? Well, there's some arguments in the past that it makes things look sharper. Well, actually, it doesn't. It makes things look slightly more three-dimensional because all it is doing is separate mid-tone contrast. That's what it's doing. So it's increasing mid-tone contrast. Now, where is mid-tone contrast? This up here is our histogram. Okay, and basically, as we should do, we're exposed to the right. So the image looks a little bit pale and doesn't really look like it was when I was there, but most of the tones are to the right. Okay. Now, if anyone's wondering where the image was taken, this was taken in the Great Plains of America. Incredibly fortunate that when I was there, this huge storm started appearing and building up across the plains, and I ran in an intense heat down this road to line up the cloud with the line of cottonwood trees. So it's kind of very symmetrical, and but when I look at the raw file like this, it's like it doesn't really work. It's a bit lifeless. So if we to apply clarity now, if we pull it across there, it kind of starts to help and it does a job. But if you notice, it's kind of limited to what it's doing in the cloud. Okay, so if we used it now, we'd probably have to go back in and try and select the cloud or work on the cloud, bring highlights on or whatever. But we certainly have to do more work on the cloud. Let's double click here to get it back to 0. So we notice that most of the data is on the right hand side, and where clarity works is in the middle here. Okay, so if we hit the function key, and you can see that zoomed in a little bit, that grey line appears in the center. Okay, so really, clarity is most effective when a lot of the data is there. And we can see now, because I exposed to the right to get the best quality file, it's actually out of the middle. So we don't want to push it all the way, but what we do want to do is try and get this data over to here. So then when we apply clarity, a lot of the work's done for us. So the way to move everything to the left is with the exposure slider. That's going to migrate the histogram to the left most quickly. So let's get the exposure slider and move it across. And we're looking at the image all the time as we're doing that, so it doesn't go too dark. The other thing we can see is that the blacks are really safe. So we're not going to start blocking up our blacks or shadows there. And as we do that, the whites are quite safe on the right-hand side. So we can bring the clarity, to say the exposure across a little bit more. Now, I know the image looks a bit dull now, but what we're interested in here is the effect of the clarity slider. Now we've moved everything to the left. If we left click on clarity now and slide to the right, we can see now it's having a profound effect on the image. Now it's separating the tonality in some of the clouds and these midtones in the clouds, as well as the blues in the background. So it's darkening the blues and also bringing a tonal separation in the highlights of the clouds. Okay, so that's one image. That was basically a color image from the plains. I'm going to sort of cancel that now, because what I want to open this image now, and this is the exact same image but taken in infrared. Now I'm just going to click on black and white to get it to black and white. Okay, and there we are in black and white. So we're starting to get back to this kind of dramatic, kind of Ansel Adams look of an image. And we can see that the histogram in infrared is slightly different. In particular, when you shoot in infrared, you shouldn't be exposing to the right too much, because the highlight tonality starts getting a bit squashed and it ruins the image, or it's very difficult to get the highlight detail that you want. Now with the infrared one, most of the data is already in the middle section here. So if we now choose our clarity slider, which is here, and we do it without even moving exposure with this image, we can see we can start to get the tonality we already want straight out. Okay, then we would just quite simply follow that up with setting a black point, not completely setting it, just moving your blacks across, and then maybe nudging your whites across. Okay, and before we know it, what we've got is an image that started off pretty flat and brown, with the histogram all distributed. And when we go to a black and white conversion of that for the infrared black and white, then we've got real effect of the clarity. So clarity works best when the tones that you want to separate, or the histogram, resides in the middle. If it's all to the left in shadows or all to the right, it won't be as effective. So look at your histogram, maybe manipulate it round initially with your exposure slider, and then if your image is flat and you need to apply clarity, that's the way to do it.